Have you ever felt an invisible weight on your shoulders with constant worries, racing thoughts, and fear about the future? What if I told you that this might not just be stress, but a condition affecting millions of people around the world, a silent battle that no one talks about? This condition is generalized anxiety disorder, yet invisible, yet incredibly debilitating struggle. And the important thing is you are not alone. Watch this video till the end, found helpful for managing it, because what I share at the end may help you realize that your condition is not the only one, and you can find light at the end of this tunnel. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be really taking a deep dive into generalized anxiety disorder.
GAD.
GAD, yeah, exactly. And we've got some really interesting sources for this one. We've got some personal stories from folks who are dealing with GAD. We've got some insights from therapists, and we even have some practical strategies that folks have found helpful for managing anxiety.
And you know what's really fascinating about this deep dive?
Yeah.
We're going to be uncovering some surprising aspects of GAD. That you might not expect.
Like what?
Like, did you know that some people with GAD experience physical symptoms? Like smelling odors that aren't there?
Wow.
Or even feeling like they're getting electric shocks?
That's wild. I definitely wouldn't associate those with anxiety.
Right. But it all comes back to how our bodies respond to stress and perceived threats.
Okay.
So we'll be getting into that. We'll also explore this idea of exceptional moments, those times when your anxiety takes a break, and how those can offer clues to calming your nervous system.
Interesting.
And get this, sometimes anxiety might even be a sign of deeper unmet emotional needs.
Okay, so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
Before we get into all those really interesting points, can we start with the basics? What exactly is generalized anxiety disorder?
Sure. So think of GAD as having this anxiety alarm that's constantly going off, even when there's no real danger.
Okay.
It's this persistent and excessive worry that's way out of proportion to what's actually happening. And the key here is it feels like you've lost control of your anxiety. It just takes over.
Yeah.
And it impacts so many parts of your life.
Yeah, that feeling of losing control really comes through in some of the personal stories that we have. One person shared how frustrating it is to try to explain their anxiety to family members who just don't get it.
Right.
And they're told to just relax or go for a walk, as if it were that simple.
Right. And it's so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Another person talked about dealing with GAD on top of other conditions like depression and agoraphobia.
Wow.
And they even mentioned having limitations on what medication they can take.
Oh, wow.
Because of other health issues.
Yeah.
It just shows you how varied and unique everyone's experience with GAD can be.
It's called generalized anxiety disorder.
Right.
But I'm curious about that term generalized. Doesn't that kind of contradict the idea that there are specific things that trigger anxiety?
That's a really good point. While GAD can affect lots of different areas of life, therapists have noticed that there are often patterns in what triggers the anxiety. So it might be feeling anxious on Sundays, thinking about the work week ahead, or maybe right before a big presentation.
Right.
And figuring out these patterns is key because they give you clues about what's really at the root of your anxiety.
So it's almost like you can start to anticipate those triggers.
Yes.
And maybe even develop strategies to cope with them.
Exactly.
Okay. And speaking of things that might surprise you, let's talk about those physical symptoms. The source mentioned some pretty unusual ones, like smelling odors that aren't there, feeling electric shocks. Wow. And even having trouble walking. It kind of makes you wonder if it's more neurological than psychological.
It's really interesting because these physical sensations are totally real.
Yeah.
Even though the danger itself might not be, it all comes down to your body's fight or flight response.
Right.
You know, when you sense danger, your body releases hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which can lead to a racing heart, muscle tension, digestive issues, and even those altered sensory experiences you mentioned.
So like your body's reacting as if you're facing a real physical threat.
Exactly.
Even if the threat is just in your mind.
Exactly. And here's the tricky part.
Okay.
Those physical symptoms can actually make your anxiety worse.
Oh, wow.
So imagine feeling a sudden rush of adrenaline for no obvious reason. That can make you feel even more anxious and out of control, and it creates this vicious cycle.
Oh, I see. So it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
The anxiety creates the physical symptoms, which then fuel more anxiety, which leads to more physical symptoms.
Precisely, and on and on. And this brings us to another interesting concept.
Okay.
The idea that anxiety might be a way of your body signaling that some deeper emotional needs aren't being met.
What kind of needs are we talking about?
So therapists talk about core emotional needs, things like belonging, control, purpose,
Right.
and status.
Okay.
And sometimes, when these needs aren't being fulfilled, anxiety can pop up. So for example, someone who grew up in a really strict and controlling environment
Right.
might develop a really strong need for control.
I can see that.
As an adult.
Yeah, like they're trying to create order and predictability in their life to make up for that lack of control they experienced earlier on.
Exactly. And this can show up in unexpected ways. Yeah. Imagine that same person trying to plan a family vacation.
Right.
Something that should be fun and exciting can become a source of huge anxiety because of the pressure they put on themselves to make everything perfect and avoid any potential problems.
It's like their anxiety is a way of trying to maintain a sense of control in a world that feels unpredictable.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
Okay.
And this understanding is crucial because it shifts the focus from just trying to manage the symptoms to actually addressing those underlying emotional needs.
Got it.
That might be driving it in the first place.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And this actually leads perfectly into the 6-step method for managing GAD that was outlined by the therapists in the source material. And they really emphasize understanding your individual anxiety patterns and those unmet needs as the first steps in breaking free from those anxiety cycles.
It's like a roadmap to understanding and managing your own unique experience with anxiety.
The first step is all about identifying those patterns in your anxiety. So paying attention to when, where, and why your anxiety feels the most intense.
Right. And then step 2 is connecting those patterns to potential unmet needs.
Okay.
For example, recognizing that your need for control stems from a childhood where you didn't have much say in your own life.
Right. So connecting the dots between your past experiences and your current struggles with anxiety.
Exactly. And once you've identified those patterns and potential unmet needs, you can start to explore healthier and more sustainable ways to address them.
Okay, this is all super helpful, but I'm curious, how do we actually go about addressing those needs and breaking free from that cycle of anxiety? One of the therapists in the source material said something that really resonated with me. The antidote to anxiety is not understanding, but relaxation. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's such a powerful statement, and it points to something that's often overlooked. You know, sometimes we can get so caught up in trying to analyze our anxiety, picking apart every thought and feeling, that we forget to actually address the anxiety itself.
We're so busy trying to figure it out that we forget to just try and calm down.
Exactly. And while understanding is important,
Yeah.
it's equally important to prioritize relaxation.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to soothe your nervous system and interrupt that cycle of anxiety we talked about earlier.
Okay, that makes sense. But what are some practical ways to do that? I mean, how do you just relax when your mind and body are on high alert?
Well, there are so many options.
Yeah.
And it's really about finding what works best for you.
Okay.
So it could be mindfulness, meditation, progressive muscle relaxation, deep breathing exercises, yoga, spending time in nature, listening to calming music. The key is to make it a regular part of your routine.
So it's not about being perfect at relaxing. It's about making it a habit.
Absolutely. Even a few minutes of dedicated relaxation each day can make a huge difference in managing your anxiety levels.
Yeah.
It's like building a muscle. The more you practice, the easier it becomes.
Got it.
And once you've established that foundation of relaxation, you can start incorporating some of the other strategies we've talked about. Like exploring those exceptional moments.
Right. Those moments where it's like your anxiety takes a vacation.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by those. How can we use those to our advantage?
Those exceptional moments are like gold mines of information. They offer clues about what naturally calms your nervous system. So by becoming more aware of what you're doing, who you're with, and how you're feeling during those moments, you can start to recreate those conditions more intentionally.
Interesting.
It's like becoming a detective of your own mental health.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying we can train our nervous systems to be calmer by intentionally replicating those activities or environments where we naturally feel less anxious.
You got it. It's like rewiring your brain
to
associate those things with a sense of peace and well-being.
And speaking of rewiring, let's touch on that concept of emotional conditioning that we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
This is the idea that past experiences can shape our current thoughts and reactions to anxiety.
Right. Those old patterns and beliefs that might be keeping us stuck.
Exactly. And it's not about blaming the past,
Right.
but about becoming aware of how those experiences might be influencing our present moment experiences.
Exactly.
So if you notice that your anxiety feels out of proportion to the current situation, it might be helpful to pause and ask yourself, is this reaction based on what's happening right now, or is it rooted in something from my past?
That's a great question to ask yourself. It's like taking a step back and observing
Yeah,
your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
exactly. And from there, you can start to challenge those outdated responses and rewrite those old scripts.
You got it. And this brings us to the importance of fulfilling those unmet needs we talked about earlier.
Right, that feeling of inner completeness.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more? Because it seems like a lot of the time we're looking for external things to fulfill those needs, like relationships, careers, achievements. But what about that internal sense of fulfillment?
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
While external factors can definitely play a role,
Right.
it's equally important to cultivate
Okay.
a sense of inner completeness.
Mm-hmm.
This involves nurturing your self-esteem, practicing self-compassion, and recognizing your inherent worthiness,
Right.
regardless of external circumstances.
So it's about building that strong foundation of self-love and acceptance.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is where step 6 of the 6-step method comes in.
Okay.
It emphasizes the importance of addressing those unmet needs for belonging, control, purpose, and self-worth.
So it's like combining those internal and external resources
Yeah,
to create a sense of balance and well-being.
exactly. And this is where self-esteem plays a vital role.
Self-esteem, it's almost like that magic ingredient that helps us navigate all of life's challenges, including anxiety.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, self-esteem is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a good friend.
Right.
It's about letting go of self-judgment, accepting your imperfections, and celebrating your strengths and accomplishments, no matter how small they may seem.
It's like giving yourself permission to be human, flaws and all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you cultivate that kind of self-acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
you start to create a sense of inner security and confidence that allows you to face challenges with more resilience and calmness.
Right.
So even when anxiety arises, you'll have a toolkit
Right.
of coping strategies.
Right.
From relaxation techniques to reframing negative thoughts and practicing self-compassion.
Wow, this has been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground already, from the science of anxiety to those practical strategies for managing it.
Yes.
But before we move on to part 2 of our deep dive, I want to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways so far? What are you most excited to learn more about? Let us know in the comments below. We'll be back soon to delve even deeper into the world of GD.
Welcome back to our deep dive into generalized anxiety disorder.
Before we took a moment to hear from you, we were talking about self-esteem
Right.
and how it can be a powerful tool in managing anxiety.
Absolutely.
It's almost like we're taking back control of our inner narrative,
Yeah.
right? We're challenging those old beliefs that no longer serve us and replacing them with more empowering ones.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can really change how we experience anxiety.
Yeah.
But remember, it's not just about positive thinking.
Oh.
It's about cultivating a
Right.
deeper sense of self-compassion and acceptance. So it's about being kind to ourselves, acknowledging our imperfections.
Recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Yeah.
I like that. It takes the pressure off of trying to be perfect all the time.
Absolutely. And speaking of works in progress,
Yeah.
let's circle back to that 6-step method for managing GAD.
Okay.
We've talked about identifying those anxiety patterns
Right.
and connecting them to unmet needs.
Awesome.
Step 3 focuses on exploring the impact of those needs,
Okay.
particularly how they might have been shaped by past experiences.
So, for example, if someone grew up in a family where expressing emotions was discouraged, they might develop a pattern of suppressing their feelings,
Right.
which could then lead to anxiety in adulthood.
That's a great example. It's about understanding how those early experiences might have shaped our emotional landscape
Right.
and how those patterns might be playing out in our lives today.
Mm.
But, some therapists might say that dwelling too much on the past can be counterproductive.
That's interesting. So how do you find that balance between exploring past experiences and taking action in the present?
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's about recognizing the influence of the past without letting it dictate your present or future.
Right.
The goal is to use that awareness to inform your choices and actions moving forward.
That makes sense. So it's not about getting stuck in the past.
Right.
But rather using it as a source of information.
Yes.
To help us understand ourselves better.
Exactly. Right. And this brings us to step 4, which is all about those exceptional moments we touched on earlier.
Right. Those moments when anxiety is less intense or even absent.
Yes.
Those moments where it feels like you get a break from the worry and stress.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear more about how we can harness the power of those moments.
Remember how we talked about becoming detectives of our own mental health?
Yes.
This step is all about paying close attention to those moments when anxiety takes a backseat.
Right.
So ask yourself, what am I doing? Who am I with? How am I feeling? What's different about those moments compared to the times when anxiety is at its peak?
It's like those moments hold the key to unlocking what naturally calms our nervous system.
Exactly. By identifying those activities, environments, or even mindsets that promote a sense of calm, we can start to intentionally create more of those experiences in our lives.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself a dose of what works.
Precisely. It's about using those exceptional moments as a guide to design a life that supports your well-being.
That's a great way to think about it. It's about creating a lifestyle that minimizes those triggers and maximizes those things that bring us peace.
Yes.
What about step 5?
Okay.
I know that one deals with emotional conditioning.
Right. Step 5 is where we really start to unpack how past experiences might be shaping our current reactions to anxiety.
So it's not just about understanding those patterns,
right,
but actually challenging them and choosing to respond differently.
Exactly. Remember, those early experiences can create these ingrained thought patterns and responses that may no longer be serving us. So, for example, someone who was bullied as a child might develop a fear of social situations, even though they're no longer in that environment.
Right.
Their mind and body might still react as if that threat is present.
It's like a survival mechanism that's stuck on overdrive.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And this step encourages us to pause and question those automatic reactions, to ask ourselves, is this fear based on the present reality, or is it a leftover response from the past?
So it's about becoming aware of those ingrained patterns and then making a conscious choice to respond differently.
Exactly. It's about creating new neural pathways, new ways of responding to those triggers that don't rely on those old fear-based patterns. And that's where the idea of rewriting the script comes in.
I'm really starting to see how all these concepts fit together. Understanding your patterns, those exceptional moments, emotional conditioning.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It is.
Yeah.
And it all leads to step 6.
Okay.
Which focuses on fulfilling those unmet needs we talked about earlier.
Right. Belonging, control, purpose, and self-worth.
Exactly.
So how do we go about fulfilling those needs? Because it seems like we're often looking externally for things to fulfill those needs, like relationships, careers, achievements. But what about that internal sense of fulfillment?
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
While external factors can definitely contribute, it's equally important to cultivate that sense of inner completeness.
That inner sense of being whole and enough, regardless of external circumstances.
Exactly. This means nurturing your self-esteem, practicing self-compassion, and recognizing your inherent worthiness, regardless of external circumstances. It's about shifting from a place of lack to a place of wholeness.
That's a powerful shift.
Yeah.
So it's about recognizing that we are enough just as we are.
Exactly. And this involves challenging those negative self-beliefs that might be holding us back. It's about replacing those thoughts with more supportive and empowering ones.
So it's like we're creating a new inner dialogue, one that's based on kindness and compassion rather than criticism and judgment.
Precisely.
Okay.
And when you cultivate that kind of self-acceptance, it creates a ripple effect. It impacts how you interact with the world, how you handle challenges, and how you experience anxiety.
It's like building that inner foundation of strength and resilience. This has been so eye-opening. I'm starting to see how these steps create a holistic approach to managing GD.
Yes.
It's not just about masking the symptoms,
but
about addressing those deeper emotional and psychological factors that contribute to it.
It is.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about strategies for managing anxiety, but I think it's also important to remind our listeners that seeking professional help is a valuable option.
Absolutely. It's important to normalize therapy and remind people that they don't have to go through this alone.
Yeah.
There are many skilled and compassionate therapists who specialize in anxiety disorders. They can provide guidance, support, and evidence-based therapies that can be incredibly helpful. It's about finding the right support for your unique journey.
Even if you're not currently struggling with anxiety, I think understanding GAD can help you develop more empathy and compassion for those who are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anxiety is something that most people experience it at some point in their lives.
Right.
And having a deeper understanding of it can help us create a more supportive and understanding world for everyone.
It can.
I love that. We're all in this together.
We are. And before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what's resonated with you the most.
Okay.
What insights have stood out?
Yes.
What strategies are you most eager to explore further?
Right.
Hold on to those thoughts
Okay.
as we move into part 3.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into GAD.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the science of anxiety to the emotional and psychological factors that contribute to it, and even some really practical strategies for managing it.
And now it's time to bring it all together.
Right.
And empower you to take those insights and turn them into action.
Exactly. We want you to walk away from this deep dive feeling equipped with tools and strategies to create a more peaceful and fulfilling life, even with GAD.
And one of the most important takeaways from our exploration is the power of prioritizing relaxation.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier.
Right.
But it's worth repeating.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
Relaxation isn't a luxury.
No.
It's a necessity.
It is.
Especially when it comes to managing anxiety.
It's like building a solid foundation for your well-being.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming.
Yeah.
Even a few minutes each day can make a difference.
Exactly. Remember the therapist's words? The antidote to anxiety is not understanding, but relaxation.
Yeah, find what works for you.
Yes.
Whether it's mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing, spending time in nature, listening to calming music, anything that helps you unwind.
Anything.
Yeah, soothe your nervous system.
And make it a habit.
Yeah, make it a habit. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to access that sense of calm, right?
Absolutely.
When you need it the most. Remember those exceptional moments?
Yes.
We talked about those times when anxiety takes a back seat.
Those are gold mines of information.
Yeah, by paying attention to what's happening during those moments.
Yes.
What you're doing, who you're with, what you're thinking.
Right.
You can uncover clues about what naturally calms your nervous system.
Absolutely.
And then you can intentionally incorporate those activities, environments, or mindsets into your daily life.
It's like you're training your brain to associate those things with a sense of peace and ease.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself a dose of what works.
Exactly. And let's not forget the power of rewriting the script.
Right. Yeah, we explored how those past experiences can create those ingrained thought patterns and reactions that might be fueling our anxiety.
Right.
But we also learned that we have the power to challenge those old patterns.
Yes.
And choose to respond differently.
Absolutely.
So it's not about blaming the past, but about recognizing how it might be influencing our present and then making a conscious choice to create a new story, a more empowering one.
Exactly. Challenge those limiting beliefs, replace them with more supportive ones, and practice responding to triggers in new, healthier ways.
And that brings us back to the importance of addressing those unmet emotional needs.
Yes.
We've talked about, throughout our deep dive, the need for belonging, control, purpose, and self-worth.
While those needs can be met through external factors like relationships and meaningful work, it's equally important to cultivate a sense of inner completeness.
Right, that inner sense of being whole and enough, regardless of external circumstances.
Exactly. And that's where self-esteem plays a vital role.
Right.
When you nurture your self-esteem, practice self-compassion, and recognize your inherent worthiness, you create a solid foundation for navigating life's challenges, including anxiety.
It's like you're building an inner sanctuary where you can always find peace and solace no matter what's happening in the outside world.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been about so much more than just understanding GAD. It's been about understanding the human experience, the resilience of the human spirit, and our capacity for healing and growth.
It's about recognizing that we are not alone in this journey.
We are not.
There's hope, there's help, and there's the possibility of living a life filled with peace, joy, and meaning, even with GAD.
So as we wrap up this exploration,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with this final thought-provoking question. What small step can you take today to
Mm.
create a more relaxing and supportive emotional landscape for yourself?
Maybe it's committing to 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation each morning, or scheduling a walk in nature after work, or maybe it's simply offering yourself a few words of kindness and encouragement.
Whatever it is, take that step.
Yeah, take that step.
You deserve it.
You do.
Remember, every small step counts, and over time, those small steps can lead to incredible transformations.
We're so glad you joined us for this deep dive into GAD. It's been an honor to share this journey with you.
And remember, we're always here to support you.
Yes.
Feel free to share your insights, your experiences, or even just a hello in the comments section below.
Yeah, we love hearing from you.
We do.
Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep diving deep,
Keep exploring.
keep exploring.
The world is full of fascinating things to discover, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
And never underestimate the power of curiosity and the courage to learn and grow.